Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to the Saturn leaving Sagittarius special. This is the special video for Saturn leaving Sagittarius. I'm live on Facebook. Saturn is 5 minutes away from leaving the sign of Sagittarius, and we are going to go out with a party. We are going to celebrate. It's been quite the journey of Saturn moving through the sign of Sagittarius. Woot woot is right, Julie. Thank you to everybody here. So Saturn of course teaches us lessons, right? There's powerful lessons there. But Saturn can also be difficult. Can we just acknowledge, sometimes Saturn is tough. And especially for those of us, like myself, with a moon in Sagittarius, this was a very difficult transit for me. From day one, I found it very challenging. And it was really this weekend with the new moon shifting the energy, and we're right at the end of this whole transit, sort of celebrating, saying goodbye to Saturn with this very powerful new moon that took place, conjunct the galactic center. And if you think back, at the end of 2012, it was December 21st, 2012, we had powerful celestial events taking place, which was foretold by the Mayan calendar. And so that was the end of the Mayan calendar, denoted a huge new beginning, this new phase for humanity was starting. One was ending, another was starting. And so to me, as I saw this particular new moon, I felt like this was going to be an affirmation, an understanding that we are now in this new phase. It's going to help us to really grow upon what it was that December 21st, 2012 was meant to be for us in our life. It's going to bring that back into our collective consciousness, sure, but in our individual journeys as well. It was going to awaken that for us. Where is it that we can birth something new, a new life for ourselves, a new love, a new humanity, a new understanding of what love is in the highest sense. So I feel like with Saturn moving through Sag, we've seen a lot of different things, right? The thing with Saturn is Saturn holds on, and Saturn represents some restriction as well. And so I think this is why over the last 3 years we've seen, before Saturn went into Sag, there was a lot more, let's just say there was a little bit more appreciation for our interconnection to everyone and everything on this planet and different types of people. And then Saturn moved into Sag and made us aware of where maybe we've created these walls around ourselves and around each other. So now that Saturn is leaving Sag, some of that restriction will start to fall away as well. And I'm really excited about that. We are at the countdown, 2 more minutes to go, okay? Until Saturn changes signs. But I use a tropical zodiac. Somebody had asked tropical or sidereal. I use a tropical zodiac for those students of astrology out there. So now the thing is, Saturn moving into the sign of Capricorn behaves differently. Just like when you are in a particular country, for example, ask me about it, Sag moon, you pick up on different energies. Different parts of you come forward. I am seeing Saturn has entered Sag. I just got the notification. I wish I had a whistle right now. If anybody has that, woot woot. Let's do a little clap. Saturn has entered Sag. Let's do a dance. Yes. Yes. We have changed. But I felt it with the new moon. That new moon awakened that 2012 knowing, and that was a huge turning point in my life. I was here in Mexico for that celebration, and it was during my trip here that I knew I was home. Yes, I meant Capricorn. Sorry, Saturn has entered the sign of Capricorn. See me getting all excited. No, Saturn and Sag is over. It's done. But this new moon really shifted the energy for me. Let me say, I felt this is what life will be like without Saturn in the sign of Sag. I remember I got up, and the first thing I did, I went into this weekend with the new moon. I got up and I went right to the mirror and I started giving myself a pep talk, right? And then I realized that I used to do this every day. Before Saturn went into Sagittarius, I used to every day get up and first thing I would go to the mirror and I'd give myself a pep talk. You're a star, Nadia, you're a star. And I'd wake up with so much energy, and that had not been there for a long, long time. So I'm really very, very excited about that. And so I felt that shift, and I've been feeling that, and now officially we are in this new phase. So that new moon awakened December 2012, learnings, inspirations, understandings for us as individuals. Now here we are. Saturn, just now, 1 minute ago, changed signs, and we are in this brand new cycle for us as a collective. And the thing is that Saturn behaves differently in Capricorn. Capricorn is its home sign. So just like if you go to a country and you feel it differently, right? Like some places they'll bring out different parts of you. There's some astrology behind that. We call it relocation astrology. But different places will bring out different parts of you. It's kind of like that when a planet moves into a new sign. It'll bring forward different parts of ourselves. The thing to remember though with Saturn is it likes to sort of contain, if you will. And there is value in that, right? We can't just have things willy-nilly always expanding. We have to find a way to make sure that the energy is grounded at the same time. So Saturn helps us ground, but sometimes it grounds in a way that shows us more of our own fear rather than grounding in a way that is focused on a more loving and wise future. But now here it is. Saturn moves into the sign of Capricorn. I think that this is going to help a whole lot of people out there to use Saturn energies that much more to their advantage. Now, I did talk about this at length in the Saturn special video I did on YouTube. It includes previews for each and every sign. If you're a superstar, you get access to all the special horoscopes that I do, but you can also download them on my website as well for your sign. I just got done last night. I finished doing the 2018 videos. So those will be up on my site tomorrow. And by the time this publishes on YouTube, I'll also include previews, and I'll include those on my Instagram as well. So you'll get to see sign by sign. Like each video is between 10 and 16 minutes long. And I talk about so many of the amazing things that are set to happen this year. So some of the amazing things that are happening, of course, Uranus. For every single sign, I gave them a little preview. Even though in the new year, like once we get closer to the spring, I'll put out a Uranus special horoscope. It is Uranus that is the big news coming up this year. We've got Saturn as big news now in its home sign of Capricorn, meaning it can bring forward its qualities of being more visionary, considering the big picture, being more focused on matters of our legacy, behaving in a way today that allows us to build the kind of future that lasts for ourselves in the bigger picture of our lives. So there are a lot of blessings here with this energy. I think a lot of blessings here as well is it's going to allow us to tap into ownership for our success. And so it's true, I have seen, because I've traveled extensively, in some places that's not the case, that people really get to take ownership and fully self-actualize. The societies aren't set up that way. But if you are in a place where it is set up that way, then I think that you have an obligation to utilize that privilege of self-actualization, to tap into your potential and to make the most of it to the best of your ability, right? To the absolute best that you can. So I'm still being asked about, Hiba is asking, so as I said, there is a whole Saturn special horoscope on YouTube that dives into what Saturn is going to mean, and then there are previews for what it means for your sign towards the later part of that video, and then once you get on my website you can access the full horoscope as well. So what's coming up in 2018? Big things. Uranus is changing signs. This is a really big deal. I think we're already getting a little bit of a preview of this because we do have, of course, cryptocurrencies. This is like the big news right now is cryptocurrencies. Uranus is going to dip into the sign of Taurus in the middle of the year, in the spring and summer, give us a little taste. And so I do feel like this understanding of what what it is that Uranus and Taurus is going to mean. It's already starting to peak, show itself just a little bit. But I think as a collective, wherever Uranus goes, it brings with it a revolution of sorts, and it brings with it greater independence as well. And of course, the big part of Taurus has to do with banking. It is the banking system. It is currencies as well. So I'm not surprised at all that this is showing up in our collective right now, that we're already sort of tapping into that energy as Uranus is slowing down to a standstill for its very, well, not very last, because it is going to go direct in next year. It's going to go direct, or rather the year after will go direct in Aries as well. But it's one of those last times, if you will, that we have Uranus standing still in the sign of Aries, and having only been in the sign of Aries, sort of a culmination moment, if you will. And next year, we'll start to see that dip. So yes, cryptocurrency is very much on the rise. I have a cousin who's really into that, has been really into that for a few years. He was telling me years ago, like, Nadia, you got to get on this. And I remember at the time thinking, okay, yeah, Uranus, Taurus, yeah, maybe, but I don't know. And now it's like really blowing up right now. And it's just the beginning. I think that that's really going to be part of a big shift that comes up in how it is we do our banking. And I'm not trying to be dystopian here, but and it's not, because ultimately it's evolution. But if you watch the show Mr. Robot is one of my absolute favorite shows to watch. The acting is so intense and so beautiful. And on that show, they show how, you know, people are paying right off their phone. Like, they take a taxi ride and they push a button on their phone and the money goes into that person's electronic wallet, just like that. And I think that that is going to be part of Uranus moving through the sign of Taurus. But we've got years to go in this, okay? So we're going to get a little taste of it in the middle of next year. And what's going to happen in the middle of next year, in August, is that Saturn and Uranus are going to do what's called an almost trine. But it's close enough to be considered a trine. It's just off by a couple of minutes. They're going to be at the same degree. They're going to speak in supreme harmony. And so this tells me there'll be this overriding concentrated energy, especially throughout August, but especially throughout the summer. And because Saturn is going into a sign that speaks to banking, in terms of, not banking in terms of the money part of it, but I think more of it in terms of corporations, in terms of social structures, in terms of the companies that have the power. Because we have Saturn moving there, basically protecting these institutions, right? No judgment here, nothing about that. I'm not taking a side one way or another. But Saturn is a protective, containing influence, or rather indication, because the planets don't influence us, they indicate for us, they're a mirror to us. So it's an indicator of some containment. Then you add to this Uranus newly in a sign having to do with currencies, having to do with banking in terms of the money part of it. And I think that we may see some new initiatives that established corporations are taking on to start tapping into this rise of the cryptocurrencies and the rise of electronic types of means of paying, if you will. But we'll really see us dive in, we'll really see it take off in a whole other way once we have Uranus comfortably in the sign of Taurus, and Saturn in the better part of 3 years will leave the sign of Capricorn. I think that is when Saturn moves into Aquarius and we have Uranus comfortably in Taurus. That's when I think the whole cryptocurrency thing is really going to take off in a whole other way. Also this year in 2018, Mars retrograde season, mid-May to mid-October. And Mars is going to retrograde, like the season takes place at that time, so Mars will enter shadow, go retro, be in shadow. It'll take place between Capricorn and Aquarius. We'll be moving back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius. Now what's really interesting to me at the same time is we're going to have a series of eclipses take place this year, and 2 of them will be in the sign of Aquarius as well. And so to me it looks like, as I look at this, what is Mars? Mars has to do with the serenity prayer. That's really what it comes down to. When I look at Mars, I feel like this is about the serenity prayer. And so, I'll talk about that. Paige is asking about Pluto and Aquarius. I'll talk about that in 2024. I'll touch on that a little bit. I'll try to remember. To me, Mars is the serenity prayer. So what does that mean? It means it helps us to understand where we have power and where we don't. And the serenity prayer, and I think there's also like worded a little bit differently to make it a little bit more inclusive, is the serenity affirmation. But it's basically, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That to me is Mars, and that is definitely Mars retrograde. That's what that whole thing is about. That's what Mars retrograde season always represents. All of us in at least one area of life have to understand and have to get really honest with ourselves about where it is that we have power and where it is that we don't, and have the courage to own the agency we have to create positive change in our life. And as Marianne is saying, surrender. Yeah, surrender is a big part of acceptance. To accept the things I cannot change, right? And to decide that you instead are going to focus, give your energy, give your love, give your power, right? Your very valuable energy over to the things that you actually can affect, and surrender the things that you can't. And I think that's going to be part of the learning here. Now, because this is moving back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius, there's something to be said here for our relationships to corporations and social structures and, what seems bigger than ourselves, and personal autonomy, personal power, and also living our truth, having a connection to inner authority versus external authority. I think that's going to be part of the larger lesson that we're going through, particularly with Mars retrograde season. And I'm incredibly excited about this because I feel like this is in some ways going to give us a little bit of a hint of Pluto moving into the sign of Aquarius. Now that is a few years away, 2024. It's amazing. I've been watching that coming for years, right? And we're almost there. Like, we're not that far away now, 2024. But I think that, some people have said that this is sort of the launch of the age of Aquarius. And the age of Aquarius is determined by, basically, it's a little hard to explain, but it has to do with the sign we see rising in the east. I'm going to just leave it at that. I'm not a science. Well, of course, astrology is a science, but it's a type of science, a definition of science that was active before the discovery of Uranus. So essentially, the age of Aquarius is said to be this launch of a new age for humanity. And we have a lot of expectations on this. And I've heard it said that Pluto in Aquarius is this, launch of a new age. But, you think about the sign of Aquarius, and this idea was actually, I was very influenced by the work of Carl Jung. He wrote an Eon. So he has this essay called Eon that you can look into. But I was very influenced by that, in which he said that if you think about the age of Pisces, right? Because we've been in the age of Pisces, that is a symbol of two fish. And those two fish are a duality, really, is what it comes down to. It's a duality. And so, yes, the sign of Pisces has to do with compassion and universal consciousness and universal love. But at the same time, it has to do with things like, you think about it, people who maybe are not connected to love, who are coming from a place of ego. You think about cults as well, right? Also ruled by that sign. So you see this duality. You see people using faith and using spiritual belief that are deeply held for personal power, for political power. That's very Pisces as well. That's the flip side of Pisces. So you think about Aquarius, the glyph for Aquarius is two electric currents, two waves, if you will, right? So that's a duality as well. Aquarius as a sign has to do with inner authority. It has to do with the new age in a sense, because it has to do with trusting yourself and creating your own beliefs around what it is you believe, your own independent religious practices. Whatever it is that helps you feel connected to spirit is part of the Aquarian energy. But another part of the Aquarian energy is hyper-scientism. When you think about in history, the Age of Enlightenment, which took place with the discovery of Uranus, When we think about enlightenment, we think about the Buddha, right? We think about this idea of reaching nirvana. But the Age of Enlightenment as a historical period was actually denouncing matters of spirit and favoring science. And by science, I mean the modern definition of science. The Age of Enlightenment heralded, I think, therefore I am, this divorce called the Cardian split, this divorce between what was matter and what was spirit. And there have been great things about that. There have been great things about that in the sense that when matter and spirit are separate, then you don't judge people based on their handicap or their ability or disability, because you know that there's something there that is worthy of integrity, right? Because up until then, or at least in ancient times, if you had a child that was born with a deformity, people would like go up to the top of a mountain and do a ceremony and say a prayer and throw the child off the mountain, thinking that there's something spiritually wrong with this person, with this baby, which is a tragedy, which is wrong, and which is a great thing about the Cardian split, which is a great thing that came from the Age of Enlightenment. The other thing, of course, racism, sexism. Once you don't judge somebody just based on the external, then you recognize that there's integrity here. And that's some of the blessing of what Uranus is about and what separating spirit from matter is about. But at the same time, if you think about how when you separate spirit from matter, then the matter, like the physical world, the environment, animals, they're just stuff. And you can do anything you want to them. And so there isn't a lot of integration with this. And so that's some of my thoughts around, like, you know, Pluto moving into Aquarius. Like, what is that going to mean for us as a collective? I think that there are going to be some people who are very determined to have that integration, to have that spirit and matter integration that astrology represents, for example. But at the same time, we may also see some of that separation as well. And as I spoke about in the Saturn horoscope, you know, I talked about Stephen Forrest, legendary, one of our living legends today. Stephen Forrest, he wrote an essay, or he wrote something about how Pluto in Capricorn can bring out the dark side, because Pluto brings out the dark side of a sign, that it's just a part of life. And it's not that we have to choose that. It's not that we have to emphasize that or anything. We can choose to bring out the light. We can choose to focus on how is what is happening is moving us towards greater love and greater wisdom. But when you look at Pluto in Capricorn, it brings out the dark side of more conservative policies. But Pluto will go into Aquarius, and it'll bring out the dark side of the other spectrum of more liberal policies as well. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how we participate in this and how we participate in the unfolding of this. Okay, so I went off on one side. Let's come back to this year, okay? Venus is going retrograde this year as well. So Venus is going retrograde. And yeah, Marianne is saying you can see the light better in the dark. That's true. But it's a mixed bag, you know. I don't know if I should share, but, you know, I get emotional when I think about it. I don't want to. So maybe I shouldn't. But I came of age in the Pluto in Scorpio generation. And I'm a Pluto in Libra, but I came of age. You know, that was my formative years. And Pluto in Scorpio, of course, that was like AIDS. I think of AIDS as a part of that, and these people dying. And yes, something good came out of that in terms of the visibility, but I don't want to get emotional. I've known people who've died, and sometimes I think, like, I would rather have them here. Mentors to me, teachers, people who loved me just for me, who made me who I am. And so I think, okay, yeah, of course, the universe is wise and loving. It made it very obvious that you have to be visible, right? Like, whoever you are, no matter what people say, if you know that you are living your truth, you have to allow yourself to be visible. And there are blessings that came of that. There are progress that came of that. But yeah. Yeah, you know, you miss people who are doing really good things in the world, who had more to do in the world, and they're not here. So I see it from different perspectives. Like, thanks, Angela. But like, you think about Pluto moving through Sagittarius, and I've talked about this, like, it brought out this really dark side of the other. And I remember, like, when 9/11 happened and I was working at Walmart, like I was just a kid. I didn't really have a lot of direction at that moment in my life. And I remember how that happened, and I felt like people who look like me and people with names like mine, like overnight I went from being invisible to having this soul representation as the other. But I was just a kid. I was just like anybody else. I was working at Walmart in Scarborough, just outside Toronto, like part of Toronto. And it was very diverse, and Toronto was very diverse. And I just felt like I was just a kid, just like anybody else. And that was when I really knew, like I decided that in some way, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life or what was going to happen, but I knew that my name would mean love in the world. So that's something, sure, and a lot of people sort of decided that as well, and that love became more adamant in the world, and so that is a good thing. But yeah, you know, it's like the dark side of things hurt. And I know somebody also who passed away in the towers as well. The cousin of someone I was very close to passed away. So it's like, okay, yeah, it made me more determined to be a loving person in the world. And I know a lot of people probably as well, we understood the value of love and the value of that deep, really persistent dedication to be a force of love in the world. And that's beautiful, right? If we hadn't seen the other side of it, we wouldn't be so dedicated to it. Venus. Let's talk about Venus. Venus retrograde season is happening in 2018. It moves between the signs of Libra and Scorpio. Those are going to be the signs highlighted by this. Now, Venus retrograde, of course, is love, goddess of love and pleasure and money and enjoying the earthly experience, right? Let's get back to enjoying the earthly experience here. Enjoying the earthly experience is a big part of what Venus is about. And the big lesson with Venus retrograde is, do I love it? That's it. Do I love it? Now, the other thing I would say with Venus retrograde is, in my own life, I have made fashion choices in Venus retrograde that made no sense when that Venus retrograde season was over. And I mean, I have bought a lot of clothes. I feel like, I'm like, Venus is retrograde. Do you really want to, do you need this? Do you want this? Does this matter? No, but I'm buying it anyways, right? I find the credit card goes way up. The balances go way up. I don't know if that's just me, but that tends to happen with Venus retrograde. So I'm very determined to not do that this time. So yeah, Erin is saying that her Venus is going to retrograde on her Venus. And so when Venus returns to where it is in your birth chart, that's called the Venus return. It's called the Venus return cycle, if you will. And when we have this retrograde of Venus moving over your natal Venus, it represents you getting another look and another look and another chance in love. It ends up being that much more meaningful and that much more personal. When you are someone who is born with Venus retrograde, I find the Venus retrograde season tends to work very well in your favor. It's kind of like the opposite of everybody else. When Venus retrogrades, you start to feel more like at ease with yourself. People normally, right, the textbook is that Venus retrograde in a chart can have a person questioning their worthiness or questioning their lovability. in their chart or in their life within themselves. But I think that that also means you do the work to make sure that your worthiness is rooted in what really matters. And Venus retrograde season tends to work really well for people who are born with Venus retrograde in their chart. But for the rest of us, even if you've got a strong Venus direct in your chart, it is the Venus retrograde season that has you asking more questions. And it can also bring up certain issues that are there, like sort of under the surface, that you haven't wanted to look at before, haven't wanted to really examine before, can be part of this as well. So just keep that in mind. I know I'll be mindful of my credit cards and how I'm using them because that's what happens for me during a Venus retrograde. And that has been the case. Like, I was reflecting on that after the last Venus retrograde, and I was like, wow, like I have all these clothes, and then I just end up giving them to my mom. That's what happens. Like, I just give them to my mom. So she's so happy. She thinks, oh, you thought of me. Oh my God. She's very happy about that. But that's for me anyways. But remember, the big question with Venus retrograde is, do I love it? Do I love it? Do I love this person? Do I love this way of living? Do I love my life? And you may not have the clear answer right away, but you'll garner experiences that will let you know what it really is for you. It can be, Angela said, history repeating, it can be. Now, I do want to quickly mention the Mercury retrogrades as well this year. If I remember correctly, Mercury retrograde is happening March and April, July and August, November, December. The Mercury retrogrades of 2018 are happening almost entirely in fire signs, so that's a really big deal. Got a little bit of dip into a water sign, but for the most part, this is fire energy, Mercury retrograde theme this year. And what that represents is knowing our power, knowing our instinct. And again, I come back to this theme of power, right? We've got a Mars retrograde this year. We've got Mercury retrogrades happening almost entirely in fire signs. It's about understanding what we are driven towards and understanding how our drive ultimately is helping us and where it is that we need to work on what we are motivated towards so that it aligns with the path of conscious choosing. So if you're just on automatic, if you're just kind of living, then you're, motivated towards things and you don't necessarily care about explaining why. But when you're more conscious, you can decide, you can put in the work to be motivated towards, to be drawn towards, to be turned on by, to be attracted to people, places, things, situations that ultimately are good for you by your own choosing, that align with your higher ideals. It takes work to get there, but thankfully these Mercury retrogrades are going to help us to do that very work. Now finally, the eclipses. So we have some interesting things happening with the nodes this year. The nodes are going to change signs as we get towards the end of the year, but we'll spend most of the year with the North Node in Leo, the South Node in Aquarius. Wherever the nodes go, so go the eclipses for the most part. But what we're going to have in the middle of the year in July is an almost eclipse, and it'll be happening in the sign of Cancer. Now, it is towards the end of the year that the North Node moves into the sign of Cancer. Susan is asking about marriage. I'll get to that in just a moment, okay, Susan? I'll come back to that. So we've got this almost eclipse happening. And this is in the sign of Cancer, and this is going to show all of us in powerful ways what a glimpse into 2019 is. Because in 2019, that whole year is when the nodes are going to be, and the North Node is going to be in the sign of Cancer. So all of us should be able to tap into an understanding of which way the wind is blowing. But it is mostly in the sign of Aquarius and Leo that we have the eclipses happening this year. Think back to August. Remember in August we had that big solar eclipse as a huge event, right? What came up for you? What learning, what lessons came up for you? I would have spoken about this in the monthly horoscopes during the eclipses. Definitely spoke about this as we went along for the superstars on my website on nadiashaw.com. But think about what it was that was showing up for you. And that is going to in some way be a reawaken this year. So I got a little off track because Carlos is here, and Carlos is amazing because Carlos used to be my boss, actually. I worked very briefly at a nonprofit association, and this was just before I left for university in England, and Carlos was my boss there, and he was amazing, I gotta say. He was so encouraging, he was so loving, he always saw my potential, he always encouraged it, and really he just stood out, and he really made an impact on me to get me to understand that I had something to give. And it kind of went in a different direction because I ended up not staying there very long. It just ended up being for a few months because I decided I was going to go to university. It was all kind of last minute when I said, okay, you know what? No, I'm going to go. I want to have a whole other experience. All the financing and stuff came through at the last minute as well, like literally 2 weeks before I was leaving for university is when everything kind of came together for me in a very powerful way. So then I decided to go, but he was a great boss. So I'm really happy he's here. It's kind of funny that he's here, but yeah. So yeah, we got these eclipses. Now somebody asked about marriage. So here's what you want to remember about marriage. I hope I'm still here. I hope you guys can still hear me because the thing kind of froze a little bit. But Mars retrograde, Venus retrograde, not the best times to get married in general. But if you're remarrying somebody, it's a little bit different. Mercury retrograde, not as high a priority, but still you want to be a little bit mindful of that. My brother got married during a Mercury retrograde. And he, he's amazing. He's such a beautiful soul. But he said that, I remember for years, he always said he was never going to get married. He didn't want to do that. Girls ain't nothing but trouble, he used to say. And then, in jest. But then, he went to a concert. He met this girl and he knew it was right. Like he says, it was just right from the moment. 6 months later, they got married in Las Vegas. It was a Mercury retrograde. Nobody asked me so I'm not going to give my opinion. But I saw Mercury retrograde, but they were having fun and they were in the zone, so it was all good. And they had an Alice Cooper wedding and they enjoyed themselves. And then they ended up having to get married again because my mother really insisted on having a proper wedding with the family and a South Asian wedding and all of that. So they got married again in May. They did Vegas, and then they did the other wedding in it was September. It was. Thank you, Carlos. I love you. I'm always grateful for you and the things I learned about myself. But okay, so that first wedding was under a Mercury retrograde, so they had to do it again, right? But I think they were kind of happy about doing it again anyways. So that's the thing you want to remember is with Mercury retrograde, sometimes like the paperwork and you got to get the papers again and things like that. But Mercury retrograde on the list of priorities, ideally you want a strong Venus, you want a strong Mars. If Venus or Mars are just like sort of at the tail ends of their shadow, not a big deal. But especially the retrograde, I would really encourage you to try and plan around that a little bit. So I have the exact dates here and I can pull them up on my iPad just so you know. If you are planning a wedding and that's something that you're wanting to do, I can pull that up for you because I know the general phase and I like to know. I mean, what I mean by that is I wish I had known this already, so apologies about that. But I'll get the exact dates for you. So an engagement is a different thing, and especially if it's at the tail end of a Mercury retrograde, like during the retrograde season, I just think an engagement is more like a promise, and it's not as much of a thing, especially if it's something you've been talking about already. If it's something that's already been part of the discussion, if you will. Venus enters shadow September 2nd, retrograde October 5th, direct November 16, and leaves shadow December 17. So these are the dates you want to remember. It's really the retrograde you want to avoid as much as possible. But again, the tail ends, like if you're getting married at the very beginning of September, I don't think it's as big a deal as getting married during the retrograde. Mars enters shadow May 12th, retrograde June 26th, direct August 27, 2 months. 2 months of Mars retrograde, leave shadow October 8. And so here are some things to keep in mind, right? Venus is goddess of love and ease and attraction. Mars is desire and mating, to put it a nice way, is mating as well. So that's why you want to have these strong in a marriage chart. But the other things you want to keep in mind when you're getting married is a strong moon. The moon is so important where it comes to a marriage. And you want a strong moon, which means it should be in a sign it likes to be in. So like the sign of Cancer, the sign of Taurus. These are signs that work well with the moon. And you want a well-placed moon. You don't want the moon to be void, because the moon represents emotional connection that you have with this person and the emotional life, the emotional viability. You want the moon to be growing. So what I mean by that is you want to get married between a new moon and a full moon, not just after a full moon, not anytime after a full moon, between a new and a full, because you want the love between the two people to grow. Now, Hiba is asking about divorce. My friend Armand Diaz wrote an amazing book called Separating Aspects, where he talks about that. And I interviewed him, so you can watch that interview on my channel. So Mariba is asking about moving during a Mars retro. Be mindful of that. Just make sure that Mars isn't retro in the 4th house in your chart and in your solar or lunar 4th house. And if Mars is not retrograding on top of your moon. These are some things I would be mindful of during a Mars retro, because I actually know somebody who moved during a Mars retro. She signed the papers with Mars in shadow, almost retro, moved during the retro, and it was all happening in her 4th house. And then after she signed the papers, when she's already booked the moving van and everything, literally 2 days before she's moving, she contacts me and says, hey, can you look at my chart and tell me everything's okay with the house? I was like, there's not a lot I can do now, right? And I saw this Mars moving around in her 4th house, and so it wasn't the easiest thing for her. So just keep that in mind, that if it's during a retrograde, it tends to need more time to ease out, and what you want is to hit the ground running. Immigration. So I just saw here, Alma asked about starting an immigration-related process. So you want to know your chart, okay? You want to have strong 9th house placements. If any planets are in Sag, you want them to be positively aspected as well. Jupiter should always be strong if you are wanting to do an immigration process. So one thing, we just had this new moon, and the new moon was in the sign of Sagittarius. And it was saying, it was doing all kinds of wonderful things. In general, barring that new moon isn't doing weird things in your chart, in general, all else being equal, having that having that Sagittarius new moon we just had is great. And especially we have Mercury retrograde right now in Sagittarius. If you're reapplying or you're doing an appeal, I would get on that right now. Good time to launch a business in late December or January. Definitely January of this year, I'm assuming. Definitely January is much better. We have all planets direct and strongly placed. So January is when you want to watch. Try to get as far away from the shadow as possible, okay? The very end of January, we're going to have an eclipse take place as well. So keep that in mind. Deborah's asking about surgery. I saw that question show up before. Surgery, you want a good Mars. Now, sometimes, look, you don't have a choice, right? It is what it is. So you have to trust your life and go with the flow. But if you have a choice, then here's some things to remember. The main thing about surgery, the moon should not be in a part of the zodiac that rules the place that you are doing surgery. So for example, the sign of Leo rules the heart. You don't want a moon in Leo when you're doing heart surgery. The sign of Aries, sometimes Taurus, rules the face. You don't want to do face surgery with the moon in Aries or Taurus. The voice, the throat, the arms, the hands are Gemini. So, and sometimes Taurus, more with the throat. So you don't want the moon in Taurus or Gemini when you're having surgery. So these are some things to watch. And then also, in addition to that, try to have a good placed Mars as well. A strongly placed Mars, making trines to other planets. Sorry about that. Making trines to other planets. a strongly placed Mars. Especially if it's trining Saturn, then that can be a really good outcome as well. So Angela, I just answered about starting a business. I think it was Priscilla that asked about that. January is good for starting a business. February can be good as well. But also you have to trust your life. Of course, be smart with the chart. I was pretty smart with my chart when I started my business, but I knew it was time. I felt it because of the things that were happening in my natal chart. I just knew it was time. And my chart ended up working out in ways I didn't expect. Like I chose a chart that had Neptune on the midheaven, Aquarius midheaven. It had Uranus, my business chart has Uranus in the 10th house in Pisces. Neptune in Aquarius with a midheaven in Aquarius. And Uranus in Pisces in the 10th. And it's all a digital business, right? It's all online. My work is entirely online. And it's about, the universe is wise and loving. That was something I used to say. I used to say, the universe is wise and loving. Nothing happens by mistake. The universe is wise and loving, and the evidence is everywhere. I used to say that. That was like my mantra. And somewhere along the way, the universe is wise and loving became the thing that sort of blessed my work, if you will. So Christopher is asking about love and life. So I will be posting this video on YouTube along with previews for the 2018 for every single sign. Just like I did for Saturn, I will do the same for the 2018 videos. And the 2018 videos will be on my site tomorrow morning. They'll be available to superstars. All of the special horoscopes I do are available to superstars as part of being a superstar. And then there'll be downloads as well on my website. Thank you to all the people who downloaded videos on my site. Thank you so much for your support, for your love. It's been an interesting transition because I've had a few things happen in my chart. So I'll share a little bit personal before I go. One thing is, Saturn moving into Sag was really tough for me for a few reasons because that's my 6th house. And so a few things happened. One was, my health. Now I'm really, really grateful. Like I said, the new moon happened this week and I felt like me. I got up in the morning, I gave myself a pep talk. I haven't done that since Saturn moved into Sag. And I feel better. I feel lighter. Like I know some people, I don't like to make it a focus because, it's just the physical. And I think you guys see my spirit and you see my intention. But, like I gained weight and now I've lost weight. And it's just because I feel a little lighter. I feel better. I like being a curvy girl, but, it's a little bit too much about me. But yeah, I feel better. And so that has been happening recently in the last few months, but it was really tough for me for a while. And then also with my business, right? Because on the one hand, look, my work is my passion. I love this. I was doing this for free for years. The first 7 years of my business, like if I'm going to get a little personal, the first 7 years, I've been in now for 12 years, I think it is, right? 2016, so I'm coming up to 12 years. The first 7 years, I lived below the poverty line. And everything I had just went into this work, my website, my YouTube channel. It was just passion. It was what I was inspired to do. And I was really determined to make it work for a lot of reasons. But I remember when I got the big thing, after I finished university, the big thing that happened to me was I got the column. I worked on a column, a horoscope column, a daily column in Canadian newspapers for 3 years. And I remember the day I got that column, the day the contract came through, I got another job with a small college. I'd been looking for work for a year. It had been a very hard year. My mom would come over and she would bring food and I would be embarrassed to ask her. She would bring food. She would leave $40 and that would mean so much to me. I would have no groceries and I would go do tarot readings in a nightclub in Toronto, and I would leave with money for groceries and I would be so grateful. So I lived like that for a really long time. And then two things happened. Saturn went into my 6th house, and my progressed midheaven moved into Taurus. And that was when it kind of, it kind of became a thing where, okay, I have to make this something that is viable for me and my future. Something that actually I can count on to create some prosperity for me, enough to live my life and help my family. And so I've been making that transition, and it hasn't been easy, right? But there's been so much love, there's been so much support, and I'm so grateful to you guys for that. I understand not everybody can be a superstar. Sometimes superstars say, why don't you just have the monthly videos just for superstars? And I'm like, because I want to keep it balanced. I want it to be like you guys to know that this is something I'm passionate about, I'm committed to, I love this, and this is why I do this, and why I've created this life for myself. So I keep offering on YouTube. I have the monthly horoscopes on YouTube. At the same time, with my progressed midheaven newly in Taurus, with Saturn moving through my 6th house, I also want to create this superstar space and honor these people who allow me to do what I love, who allow me to actually live in the practical world. And with the downloads, right? These downloads are $2.99 on my website, and all the special horoscopes are there to purchase as individual downloads. And your support and your love for them has meant the world to me. Thank you so much to all the people. Thank you, the people who do that. It allows me to then continue to do this and to create content and to just share what I do, and not have to worry about making sure that my parents are okay and making sure that I have groceries. It's not fun to focus on that sometimes, right? Especially when you're me and you're dealing with things in the spiritual realm. I want to focus on the spiritual, and I believe in honoring spirit. And I believe that because of those 7 years of dedicating myself and showing the universe that this is something that I'm deeply committed to, and I will do no matter what, I will find a way to do it. Because of those 7 years, now, only in the last few years, have I been able to earn the trust of people actually paying for what I do. And so you guys make that possible, and I thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole, for your love. Thank you, Susan. Really so grateful to all of you guys. Thank you for joining me. Erin is asking about my weight. See, this is what I'm not crazy about talking about, I will say, because I don't want to make it about the physical, although I enjoy the physical, right? So there's this mix. I love makeup. Makeup is like the only time when I feel like a girl, when I feel like a kid, when I feel like I can play. And when I was a little girl, I used to play with makeup. I would just sit and do makeup for so long. But I remember I went recently when I was in Vancouver. I went to this makeup artist convention, and when I went there, I was thinking I could make videos and do makeup and stuff like that. And I went to that convention, I saw people really serious about makeup, and I was like, no, I think I'm gonna stay in my lane. I'm gonna just stick to astrology here. As much as I love makeup, it's like my private thing. I may one day make some videos, but anytime I think about making it, it just doesn't feel right. So when it feels right, I may make some tutorials. I might put them on my Instagram. But it's just fun to me. That's it. This is play, and this is what I do for myself. And it changes. So my 2nd house cusp is Leo, actually. My rising is Cancer. Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Margaret, for being here. Thank you, everybody. I hope I answered your questions. I've been online for I think it's been just over an hour now, and we celebrated, didn't we? We partied. Yeah, actually my moon and Venus are conjunct in my chart, so I think that's the makeup part of it as well that I enjoy. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm really grateful. Again, this will be up on YouTube. I'll have the previews for 2018 on this video, at the end of the video, and on my Instagram as well. And I hope you love them. I hope you enjoy them. And the downloads and the superstars have access, and the individual downloads will be on my website on nadiashah.com. Thank you, Tara. I'm looking forward to hugging you in Jamaica at your wedding. It'll come before you know it. I hope you guys will be at the UAC conference. I'm so excited about UAC. I have a few speaking things coming up. I've already been contacted by people who are excited to meet me in these different places. I'll be in Kolkata at the end of January. I'll be in Bath, UK at the beginning of March. I will be on the weekend of the 19th of March. I'll be in Serbia, in Belgrade, and in May I will be in Chicago as part of the UAC conference. I really hope that you guys can come out. I'm always open to meeting you guys and hugging you. Thank you, Carlos from the 6. He's a very proud representative of Toronto. And thank you to everybody. Thank you, Susan, for all the love that you gave and for being here, being like the first one on. Susan gives a lot of love, and I appreciate it all. Thank you, Hiba. So I'm wrapping up now. For rising signs, I have those videos on my YouTube channel as part of Synchronicity University. You can, go to my channel and look up Scorpio Rising or Scorpio AC, and it's there. And I hope that you enjoy that and dive into it for a whole video. Thank you, Lucky Star. What a great name. I'm not planning to be in Houston just yet. My cousins were raised in Houston. I'd love to go. And so I hope that comes together. Miami is one of my favorite cities. I love Miami. It is incredible. I would love to speak there someday. I hope that comes together as well. Thank you, Alma. Happy holidays to everybody. Happy New Year. Happy Saturn changing signs. We are going to have fun. And Calgary, I'll keep you posted. I love Canada, of course. I'm a proud Canadian. So thank you, Carrie. Thank you, everybody. I could stay here forever. I really could. You hang up. No, you hang up. You hang up. That's how it feels when I'm talking to you guys. Thank you. I love you. Have a wonderful new year. Have an amazing 2018. As always, I will be here every single week, every single step of the way. This is my calling, right? This is my path. There's no doubt to me that this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, and I look forward to doing it for many, many, many decades to come. And thank you for sharing your journey with me and celebrating the sky with me. Okay, bye. Hello, fabulous superstar Aries. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is, and it truly is amazing. We've got moving energy. We've got you moving forward, moving on. We've also got empowered energy as well, and you truly coming into your power indeed. So let's start with that. Wherever Mars goes in the sky, it is a representation of you, being that Mars is your ruling planet. And so when Mars is doing important things like a Mars retrograde season, well, it tends to denote a particularly important time for you, a time where you are coming to understand your power more deeply. I like to think of Mars as really a lesson, if you will, in the serenity prayer, which is grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change. Hello, fabulous superstar Taurus. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is. It is a big year for you, a consequential year for you, a year that is set to set the stage for even bigger changes coming up in the years ahead. Really, when you look back at your life and you think about, okay, when was it that really I reached this fork in the road and I chose a path and that path led me to myself? Well, it will be 2018 for a whole lot of Taurians out there. It is that big a year. Now, there are a few big reasons why it is so significant. One part of it is Uranus, of course. Now, the other part of it is Venus, your ruling planet, and the Venus retrograde season this year. So I'll talk about them both. Let's start with Uranus. Of course, I will do a Uranus special once we get into the new year. Hello, fabulous superstar Gemini. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an incredible year it is. It truly is a big year. There are monumental big shifts happening in the sky. But of course, when I do the annual horoscope, the first thing I like to zone in on is what do I think is going to be most important for you, for your sign, for the sign of Gemini? Well, I got to start with, of course, Mercury. The Mercury retrograde seasons happening this year is what you want to be mindful of most, being that Mercury is your ruling planet. So the Mercury retrograde seasons are taking place March and April, July and August, November, December. These are the key periods, the key times that you want to be mindful of Mercury retrograde. But what's especially interesting about Mercury retrograde this year is that it's pretty much happening all. Hello, fabulous superstar Cancer. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is. It truly is so amazing. And I think that for you in particular, it is going to be incredibly important. And the reason for that really comes down to the nodes. The nodes of the moon are primary where it comes to prediction. They speak to what it is that the soul desires to do with this lifetime. And so if you think about it, the planets, they speak to what it is that we want and why we want it and how we go about getting it. But it is ultimately the nodes that speak most profoundly to what the soul desires to do with this lifetime. And sometimes, right, it changes, like what your soul desires to do and how it goes about putting you in karmic moments so that you can more fully honor and Hello, fabulous superstar Leo. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing, amazing year it is set to be for you. It's a big year for you personally. It's a big year for you as well where it comes to matters of love. In fact, love and partnership are going to get a very, very special focus for you now. There's a few reasons I say this. So the first is we have this year Mars retrograde season. Mars retrograde season is going to speak to all of us in at least one area of life from mid-May right to mid-October. That is the entire season, okay? And this is happening in your opposite sign. For much of the retrograde season is going to take place in your opposite sign, which means this is going to speak very powerfully for you when it comes to matters of partnerships. Hello, fabulous superstar Virgo. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is, I gotta say. There's a whole lot going on this year, monumental moves. And of course, when I look at the year ahead, I try to look at what I think is going to be most important for you in your sign. And there are a couple of things that stand out to me. Of course, Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is always going to be important for you because Mercury is your ruling planet. And when Mercury goes retro, it brings a special focus to the area of life being highlighted with that Mercury retrograde. So you've got 3 Mercury retrogrades this year. One is March and April, and that is speaking most profoundly to things like your relationships with financial institutions. And so over the course of the spring, you may feel a little bit like you're needing to go back and forth. Not the time to be applying necessarily for any. Hello, fabulous superstar Libra. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is. We have powerful, rare retrogrades taking place. We've got a continuation of eclipse and really all this attention paid to matters of heart, matters of love, matters of fulfillment on a heart level in every area of life. These are the energies that I think are going to matter to you most. So let's start with Venus, your ruling planet. Venus will be in retrograde season in one form or another, right from October right to mid-December. And Venus is going to be, as part of this retrograde season, kind of dipping in and out of your sign, making it that much more meaningful for you. Now, Venus retrograde is an infamous time when past lovers can show up again, when you're looking at your... Hello, fabulous superstar Scorpio. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2017. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is, and really a big part of what makes it so amazing comes down to Venus. Venus is going to retrograde in your sign this year. Now, Venus retrograde tends to be a really important time when we are considering love and reconsidering the love that we have and the love that we want. Do you really love it? That is the big question when Venus goes retro. But what's really interesting about Venus retrograde is that most of the Venus retrograde season will take place in your sign. So the season begins in September right to mid-December. It is that chunk of time that is sort of highlighted throughout 2018 as a very important part. Hello, fabulous superstar Sagittarius. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is. I mean, it's a big year for you, and it gets bigger as you move towards the end of the year. And that is because two things, well, more than two things, but two big things are happening this year that I think are very important to you. One is you are entering this year without Saturn in your sign. No Saturn in your sign. And so really, before this year even starts, you should be feeling a shift of energy. It's almost like you start feeling like yourself again. Optimistic, open, excited about the day, excited about your future. With Saturn in your sign, it can feel a little bit heavy. It can feel a little bit serious. It can feel like obligations are there that must be addressed. Hello, fabulous superstar Capricorn. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is. I gotta tell you, it is big, and there are big moves set to take place. So before the year has even begun, we've got Saturn in your sign, your home planet, right? Your ruling planet in your sign. Now, of course, I did a whole Saturn special that you can watch as a superstar. You can get it in the superstar space. But I do want to talk a little bit about that when I look at the year ahead, because this is your ruling planet coming home, which means it's able to operate a lot more in its best possible sense because it is in its home sign. Now, your sign is thought to be particularly ambitious, goal-oriented, if you will, and eager to align with a higher vision. Well, Saturn now in your... Hello, fabulous superstar Aquarius. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is. We have a sky that is having you on the move. I mean, talk about shifts and changes that will speak to you in deeply personal ways. Well, that's what we have this year. And I really do think that this is the kind of year that will stand out at the trajectory of your life, where you got in touch with your power, you got in touch with your purpose, and you learned to be more at ease within yourself, within your body, and within your spirit, making it that much more meaningful to you. So let's start with your ruling planets. You've got an ancient ruling planet and a modern ruling planet, and both of these planets are on the move. Let's start with Saturn, your ancient ruling planet. Hello, fabulous superstar Pisces. Welcome to your horoscope for the year of 2018. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. What an amazing year it is. We have so much going on in the sky, and the big word really is moves, monumental moves, and retrogrades, important retrogrades taking place as well. So let's take it one at a time. The big monumental moves, of course, are these planets changing signs. So Saturn special is already up. Uranus special will come in the new year, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about these moves now. With Saturn, before the year is out, changes signs, moves into its home sign of Capricorn, meaning that its energy doesn't feel as hard. Like the lessons tend to flow a lot more easier. And for you, you've got Saturn newly in a part of the sky that has to do with